Welcome to China Paradigm, a show powered by Dashi Consulting, where we interview seasoned entrepreneurs and experienced managers in China about their business and experience in the country. Hello everyone, I'm Matthieu David, the founder of Dashi Consulting and its podcast China Paradigms. Joining me today is Vincent Djen. You are the founder, but it's a family business. So we are going to try to understand, if I can use the word founder, of Cheng Kung Garments, which is, as you mentioned in your presentations, an experienced family business founded 45 years ago, and being the perfect partner in woven fashion, jackets, outerwear, pants, dress, skirt, and a specialist in products with sustainable material for brands like Old Molly, Philippe Paquet, Samsoe, Gani. Some of the clients you have are clients too, by the way, and also Bruins Spaza, Peak Performance Gant. And it was started in 1975, which is actually exactly 45 years this year. You're about 20 people now with offices in Shanghai, factory in Shenzhen, and a showroom in Hong Kong. And you have started more recently another company, which is basically an extension of the sustainability part of Cheng Kung Garments, which is called REMAKEHUB. And REMAKEHUB is to give life to this sustainability component in the apparel industry, which is growing big now. And you describe REMAKEHUB as a creative resource circulation towards sustainable nylon products, especially focusing on ocean waste. I don't think it's the only thing you do with REMAKEHUB, but that's one of the focus I feel. To give a bit of understanding of the industry, textile in China, we often say that it's over. Now it's going back, going to Vietnam, it's going to Cambodia, it's going maybe to India or Myanmar and so on. And China has to evolve towards other industries. But the fact is, under the Chinese government's 13th five-year plan for economic and social development, there was a target of producing, and I don't know if it has been achieved actually, 4.5 million tons by 2020 of recycled textile. So the government is pushing for recycled textile, but the government is also pushing for what we call China 2025, but also Industry 4.0, meaning to have more modern, more robotics, factories with robotics. And still, China is still very big actually on textile. When we look at numbers, and we don't try to see what people just say, but we look at numbers, China accounted for nearly 38% of the world textile exports. And exporters a big one still. Textile and clothing exports accounting for China itself about 20%. So the government cannot get rid of textile. It's very important for them. That makes live a lot of people. And Chinese apparel sales reached like 2 billion yuan in 2018. We don't have more recent numbers, increasing by 7.8%. So it's growing fast for the interior market, right? The market within China. You're also working with startups, big brands, to put at the disposal your knowledge and network. And you have started before, and I think at the end of the interview, I will have questions for you on this. A few brand or one brand called Black High Rags. And I will have certainly a question about how starting brands, which is very interesting from your perspective. Sorry for being that long, but I wanted to put more perspective on the talk. Would you like to add anything about what I've just said?
That's really that's pretty much it. Thanks for having me, Matthieu. We also do a lot of advising for startups. So that's what Fashion X does. But yeah, that's pretty much some of all of it. And REMAKEHUB is it's a startup that has actually mainly started by my friend. So I joined it almost a year and a half ago. So yeah, not quite an extension, but it's a broader sense. We work not only just in textiles, but also in other consumer goods industries as well.
I see. It's a full unit. I mean, by itself. We are today. We are recording. It's July 27th, and 2020. And 2020 is very special for everyone.
Yes.
And I think for textile, it's even more special because shops were closed, factories were closed sometimes. At some point, shops are still closed in some part of the world, very slow. What's the situation now with the COVID? Started in late January. We are in July. China has pretty much solved, mastered, controlled the pandemic. What's the situation in your perspective of COVID?
The COVID, I think it has a really big impact on the industry. As we know right now, there's a lot of other parts of the world that are still in, a lot of the stores are opening, maybe closed or in different stages. It does have an effect on the industry as a whole. If we look at the export industry for China exporting to the other parts of the world, the orders are coming back. So in the January when the COVID started, so there was a lot of issues with fulfilling the orders because the factories couldn't reopen right away after Chinese New Year. So there was delays there. Now it's more about, and then we hit it to a part where is at the West, the brands are starting to cancel or decrease the orders because of the COVID hitting them in late March. It's when they start locking down. And then now we got through that phase where the decreased orders and so on. Now the factories are looking for more orders. So the orders numbers are coming back, but it's not like before. And a lot of people think, and I think it won't be like before for some time. Yeah,
you mentioned to Sophia, who helped me prepare this interview, that it was in the press. Actually, you wrote in February that production of the autumn and winter collections may also be delayed. And at that time was February. Is it the case that autumn and winter collections are delayed now, and we may not see the full collection for autumn and winter? It could be missed as a season.
Right now, it's okay. Right now, because of the factory and so on, they came back online quite quick. So the fall winter season is not affected much.
Okay. Going back to Cheng Kung Garments, you mentioned it's a family business. So what's the story behind?
My parents started in 75 in Hong Kong.
In Hong Kong?
Why they started? Yeah. I'm originally from Hong Kong, so yeah. But our family has a lot of roots in Shanghai. So why they started this business? Well, in the 70s in Hong Kong, it was a thriving manufacturing hub, even though it's a very, very small place. And garment was one of the most popular things. So they just say that it's like, oh, okay, garment business was doing quite well at that time in manufacturing. So let's do that. Even though my parents, their background was more in engineering, electronics, and so on, but there wasn't much of those opportunities back then. So they just jumped into the garment business.
Because we see Hong Kong as a trading place, but it was a production place too, with a factory. So you were managing a factory. Your parents were managing a factory in Hong Kong.
Yes.
Where was the factory? New territories, or?
Yeah, it was in Chengwan.
Okay.
Yeah, our office in Hong Kong right now actually was our old factory, our old factory floor. Yeah,
I see. Hong Kong has changed a lot, I believe.
Yes.
The price of this place also certainly too. At the time you rented first time or bought it. So, for me to understand, it was started family in your family in 1975, and then at some point you decided to take over the business. What was in your mind so that you told yourself, "I'm going to take over"? It's not an easy decision because you saw your parents working in this industry, and that means you are going to continue the same thing instead of maybe trying something new, something very different. Or did you change the business actually, or was it starting again the business because you changed the way it was managed? Could you help us understand how you took over? If you have taken fully over.
Actually, my brother and my mom are still in the business. My mom is quite semi-retired now. She's 78, so that's why she just go every now and then. And my brother and I are still running the business. I started when I was in 2005. When I graduated from United States from college. Why I took over, I think it's like, okay, the business was doing quite okay, and then I just graduated from college. There was a lot of things to try. I had the option to stay in the US, but I think it's like, okay, as a family person, I was like, okay, parents were getting old, they need some help, and I was just graduated, so I was like, okay, I could go back. Yeah, I went back to I went to Shanghai pretty much. So I was like, okay, Shanghai, I never really been there. I've only been there a few times when I was little. I was like, okay, that's a new fun thing to try. So let's do it.
Did you have the idea to bring innovation, to bring something new, or you were more in the idea to learn from your parents, to learn from what's existing, and actually to be able to scale what's existing?
Yeah, at the time I was thinking is learn the business first, even though I grew up in the garment textile business the whole my life. When I was little, I would hear like phone calls between my mom and factory managers about production and things like that. I sometimes I would like go to dinner with my parents, with some clients and so on. So I had some idea of the business, yeah, but not much. So went back, really learned the business. I also took some classes in pattern making and so on, just to more learn the technical side and things. Actually, my school had a fashion merchandising class, because my school, Apollo Pomona, had a program, fashion merchandising, buying that program. So I took some classes of that before I go back. So I just like, okay, just see what it was like. So took some of those classes, learned some about fabrics, and then I went back. And then went back, because that was the time, starting to use internet and so on. That was the time I was thinking, okay, I could bring more of the new technology and new things of how to do things into the business.
What about now? Would you be able to share a bit of numbers, like if you can share revenues or number of clients in 1 year, or number of Apple's products, to give an idea to people who listen to us? What's the current size of your business?
We're like a small, medium size. We do about 10, 11 million US dollars per year in business. That's our, because we mainly focus on outerwear. So our volume is not, our overall per year volume is in the hundreds of thousands pieces. So it's not big for industry. I have some of my friends, they do like 1 million pieces per year, but we only do like 10 less. But because we do outerwear, which is a more higher value items. Yeah.
How many pieces are you making in a year?
I haven't really counted that. We only usually go by the revenue number. It's about 150,000, 200,000 pieces. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Mm-hmm. Do you have cycle in your business? Are there some time where it's a high season, sometimes it's a low season? What cycles are you in?
Yeah, because we do outerwear for the export market, so our peak season is in the from late March all the way to July. That's our peak season. Yeah.
What do you do during the low season? That's something that people don't think of when they start a business, when they think about the business. But very often business, you have a low season, high season, but you have fixed costs the same. Like the salary is the same, the payments the same, and so on. So it's not flexible. How do you do to manage that?
Our low season is pretty much August. August is quite a slow season for us. And then from September till December, before January, we start things get busy again. So we would do some like lighter weight outerwear. So that kind of windbreaker, spring jackets, that kind of thing, baseball jacket, things like that. So sometimes we do get some thicker down jacket business during that time also. Yeah, to manage, you really need to have a strong portfolio and good client base, like a big enough client base so that you can ride out that high and low. And then also you just have to have that. You are good. You need to be good at making one thing, so that is your bread and butter thing. But you also need to be good at something that it's just as good, or like your second best things. It kind of like swimming, right? Those guys can do like freestyles. Maybe that guy's bread and butter, his gold medal thing, but he could still be a challenging, butterfly or breaststrokes and things like that. So that's how we ride it out. Yeah.
I see. There's one thing in the document that was sent to me by my team, gathered information about your company and yourself, gathered online through a phone call with you. And I'm not very clear if you only use your factory or you have a factory, but sometimes you use other factories to work with, depending on product, depending on requirements for clients. I understand you cannot produce everything, but what I understood is that the final product, final goods, a large part of them are managed by your factory, or my understanding is not correct.
Our factory only produces about a third, fourth of our productions. The reason is our factories are only good at doing certain things. Throughout the years, we started working with some factories in the Shanghai area, in Jiangsu, in Zhejiang, sometimes even in Shandong. So we built up quite a strong relationship with working with factories in this part of China. So the other 60-70% is produced in factories that we have long. They will be like a strategic partner where we have anywhere from 30 to 60% of the production capacity.
I see. Do you still have to visit them to control quality and so on, or they are such a good partner that you consider that they are really part of your ecosystem and maybe nearly part of the company of your extended family? Ray Dalio would say in principle, like extended family. Is it your extended family, or still you have to double check to go to the factory because maybe it's a new generation taking over in the factory, different management, or it's pretty well processed?
Honestly, when I was just started business, getting into the business, I would visit factories a lot, really learning the things. Even though when I was little, I would go to the factory with my parents. But back then, it was a totally different reason why I would go, because I went there when I was little because no one would take care of me. I need to like chill at the factory just to do some homework and so on. Now. When I came back, it was different. It was really about learning the process and so on. And now, because we have processes, we have teams to take care of the productions, the quality, and so on. So I don't go to the factory as much as I used to before. I would go to factories now to visit new factories, chill with the owner, just sit down and maybe talk about some of the future plans and things like that, or take clients there. Or sometimes if we have some interesting projects, I would go see and how it would turn out. So on. Yeah,
more for building relationships than actually for fully quality control because you know them already very well.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's a good transition for question I had related to production. as we said in the intro, a lot of people say China is not the country anymore for textile. I think you've heard about that. You've read.
I heard a lot.
Yeah. What do you feel about this? Because the numbers don't say that. The numbers say for raw material, China is still number one, and for export, still number one. And then there is this big Chinese market where actually you need to deliver for the Chinese market. So what do you feel about other countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, or Myanmar, India? Can they compete with China? Can they have the infrastructure, the factories, the skills? One thing I like in your introduction to remind people, I think it's an introduction of the company, skilled workers to produce textile. It's not only machine and you put whatever you find on the machine. It requires learning. It requires experience.
Yes.
It requires skill. So this cannot be taken over so quickly at such a competitive pace as what China did. So what's your view on that?
China is still one of the most important place of producing textiles, whether it's home textiles or clothes that we wear every day, and even for a lot of products. It's because it has one of the best infrastructure out there. It has one of the deepest supply chain. India, Vietnam, Southeast and South Asia countries, they're building up their infrastructure. They're building the depth of the supply chain, but it will still take some time for them to build that. And what makes China so unique in terms of the importance is you see that 30% is that not only we have the skilled laborers, we have the infrastructures, the supply chain. The depth of the supply chain is because we have that massive domestic market. You cannot have a strong, you cannot really develop, I don't think that you can develop a strong manufacturing base if you don't have a strong local market, because export orders are very seasonal, okay? And export orders, the margin and so on, it's limited, there's limited. But when you have the domestic markets, you have low end, medium end, and high end. So you can really thrive as the entire supply chain industry can really thrive, because the factory owners, for whether it's for zippers, for fabrics, and so on, not only they can just provide products and new developments for the export markets, but they also provide for the local markets, so that it can really make their business really thriving and stronger and more variety. So you can really source a lot of different things in China. And that is one of the strengths and is the depth of the domestic market. It's a domestic market that has 4 seasons. In the wintertime in China, we need down jackets, we need winter coats. For a lot of Southeast Asian countries, that's not the case. So their expertise on these things can only be so limited. So it's and also with the Belt and Road initiatives, now the railroad to Europe, it's a very, very convenient and popular choices. It cuts down on the shipping time. So and also another thing is the cross-border e-commerce. Cross-border e-commerce from China selling to other parts of the world is becoming more and more popular and convenient. And this also helps the entire industry to go forward, not just like a mass production base where each style would produce hundreds of thousands. Now we can be very, very nimble, flexible, where we can produce 1 or 2 pieces custom made for all the clients in the world.
Why is it still so labor intensive? Why textile is still so labor intensive? And we're in 2020 where Tesla is producing cars with no person in the factory, and textile was created like in the 18th century started with machines. And it seems that there are changes, but it seems that not that huge as what we could have thought. How do you feel about it as an entrepreneur with, I believe, thinking a lot about innovation and change?
It's only, I think, this few years, automation, robotics in factories for us are really taking into the center stage. It's because Garment making is always labor intensive, and there was a lot of competitions from the countries with lower labor costs. So a lot of friends would just say, okay, this place is getting expensive. Let's just move to a place where it has a more competitive price. So that delays the development of these automations, robotics into the industry. But now people realize is that we're running out of places to produce at a very, very low cost. So people are now really looking into the robotics and automations.
But it's possible, right? There are too many steps that needs to be handled by hands, by humans. It's too complicated. It's possible, right?
It's possible. One of the biggest challenge is to have the robotic arms to pick up a piece of fabric because it's soft. That's the biggest challenge. It's in auto factories. In those, you're always picking up something solid, something that's hard, right? That's a lot easier than something soft. And then you pick up something soft, you have to put it on the flat surface that needs to be flat, right? You cannot have the piece of soft fabrics to be wrinkled, right? So that's the challenge. But we are tackling that. I've seen factories and I've seen robotic companies are overcoming that. So I think it's that with the cost of the robotics is decreasing. In maybe 2 or so years, we'll see a lot more of these robotic arms in the factory, on the factory floor now. Yeah.
Do you have already an idea of the robotics and how much you could replace people and how much time you need to pay off compared to people?
Right now, the cost of the robotic arms, there are some cheaper solutions that are getting close to the investment range of the factory owners. Because factory owners will not really invest unless they're really big ones. They will invest in machines that are in hundreds of thousands of RMB. Once they get into around 50, 60,000 RMB per machine per robotic arm, that it's the sweet spot. And then you need to have people to program them. That it's not something come from our industry. So we need to tap into other industries to hire people and so on to program them. And I think at the beginning, it will still be for some certain orders that have larger quantities because you need time and cost to program these robotic arms. But I would see that down the road, people will modify these machines just for the industry use. I've seen a lot of small companies and so on. They modify certain existing machines to fit their production needs. So that we're going to see that at the beginning, it will be more for the bigger quantities, and then it slowly goes down as other technologies evolves, right?
So 50,000 RMB, it's about 8,000-9,000 USD for one machine. That's an investment you believe that medium-sized businesses would be willing to do to transform their factory. You mentioned in your presentation that you can be quite flexible in terms of MOQ, and that's something I think every entrepreneur, every business will want to go into textile. Actually, not only entrepreneurs but medium-sized businesses are concerned about what's the minimum order I need to buy from the factory to get product and ship them. So you were mentioning 300 pieces per style. What has changed from the past that you are able to do that compared to 20, 30 years ago where you had to do a bigger amount of MOQ? As far as I understand, this number is going down, right?
Yeah, definitely it's going down. Back in my parents' days, the order volume, they were always like 50,000, 60,000 pieces. That was maybe considered small. Some of them would be even in the hundreds of thousands. But nowadays, because of the changing in how e-commerce and everything, how people want to have things quicker, more unique and so on. So the seasons or the assortments have changed. So the order quantity has become per style has become less and less. And I will see that will continue happen after COVID. Right now, I say 300 pieces, but we're working actually to make it even lower, to be more nimble to serve our customers better. Yeah.
Because the challenge is that you can produce like 100 or 200 pieces as MOQ, but still you have to keep to keep competitive prices on them, because
Yes.
the end client for the brands which are buying from you, are not going to accept to pay a higher price because there's a limited amount of production, right? So that challenge is here, and it requires a lot of innovation, thinking about how to make it possible.
Yeah. They will pay a little more for the small volume quantity, but we have to, at the end, we have to make it efficient also. How to produce 200 pieces, 100 pieces, 300 pieces at a very efficient way. So it's about rearranging certain of the workflow of the factory floor, the production process. Yeah. And also really focusing on efficiency and decreasing unnecessary waste and so things like that. Be accurate on things. Yeah.
I remember Carlos Ghosn, the ex-CEO, president of Renault and Nissan, said that some time ago. He said that innovation is not only about creating new products; it's also about being able to produce at a lower cost something which is existing. And he was very proud to say that Dacia, a brand they bought in Eastern Europe, was innovative because it was making it possible to sell a car at 5,000 USD, and that was innovation. Basically making it social by a lot of people being able to access to this kind of product. And I feel we are a bit in the same innovation here. We mentioned about robotics, and as all the time in China, the state is very involved. And the state created Made in China 2025, Industry 4.0, Border Initiative. The cross-border e-commerce is also in some way supported by the government, because tax is very high, right? And you can import in China, but you can export it so easily, one by one product to Europe and still be competitive. So what and at the opposite. So sorry to complete the thinking. The Chinese government is pushing for production, but also for a better production with more control, more regulations. And in 2014, so it's not new. Already in 2014, 15,000 factories, state-owned, private, had to publish real-time figures on emissions. And it was in 2014. How do you feel about this environment with innovation pushed by the government and regulations actually forced by the government? Is it hard to implement? Is it adding cost? And at the opposite, is there a support from the Chinese government to change factories, to make them more innovative?
Actually, in the 2025 plan, there's also mentioning of the circular economy, and that's where our industry is actually heading. In this past 2-3 years, sustainability in the industry is one of the most important things. It's also being pushed by the government also. So actually, we're seeing more cleanup in the industry, where the textile mills, the dyeing houses are encouraging them to use more water reuse. Most of the factories now in the coastal cities, the water reusing is about 30%. Some factories, they are able to up to 70% for the dyeing and weaving. So it's becoming more and more cleaner industry. It's also it's the government's initiative, and also is where the industry is really going forward. It's cleaner, more eco-friendly, and it's also about how we become a more circular, where we can, with the textile waste, we can go back not into the landfill, not to burn them, but also back into new materials, or how to reuse them again. Yeah.
And is the government helping on this, or is it more added cost for you, because to comply to regulations which are heavier and heavier? And actually, one thing, when we look at profile and your presentation, there are so many accreditations, so many regulations,
Yes.
and so on. For instance, that's one indication that it's key in your industry.
There are these new rules, regulations, and so on. They do add cost, but they do also give you incentives. Okay, tax incentives. And if you are developing new technologies in the eco-friendly technologies in the industries, they give you opportunities to present, to meet potential investor clients, and so on. So you can apply for grants and things like that. It's not as easy as way back in the days in the 90s and the 2000s, but there are still opportunities for increasing your awareness when you are producing these things. These things are not just by private companies, but also by industry associations that they give you a platform where you can promote your things. So, which is quite. I see it's quite helpful. Yeah.
You got grants? You got subsidized from the government?
No, we for REMAKEHUB we applied for some, so we're still waiting for some of the final ones. We're going through that process, but not for Cheng Kung.
Yes, but I see.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned in the press to the team that there are some new tools and innovation in textiles, 3D printing, digital printing, taping, bonding. What is it about? Okay, could you tell us more? Because a lot of people say, we talked a lot about 3D printing like 8 years ago, 7 years ago, was a big thing. It never happened. We were thinking that everyone would have a 3D printer at home. You could go downstairs and print whatever you want, your mug, it's not happening. It has not happened. When you say 3D printing in textile, digital printing, it sounds like Industry 4.0, but at the opposite, what you said is that the factory, you said in an interview to my team that the factories are not connected enough to be Industry 4.0. From the floor to the machine and so on. So when we talk about 3D printing and digital printing, what are we talking about?
Yeah, so I can give an example. So 3D printing, the most we see is in fairs, in exhibitions. Those are very for the industrial life. So they're creating hard objects. So for auto industries and other things. For our industry, for textile industries, it's the 3D printing is we call more 3D weaving. So the jumpers, the sweaters can now be weaved in one go, instead of you weave pieces and then 2D pieces and then you sew them, you attach them by hand. Now it's all one piece, one single roll. You can print one. So we often call that 3D printing. I would call it 3D knitting to be more precise. Yeah, because that it's by a machine, so you can connect that to the even all the way to the customer CRM system, the ordering system, where when there's an order comes in, then that will ring a bell and then it will produce, and then you can also track the process, the status on a lot easier than because in the sewing machines now a lot of factories, what they're doing is that they have these IoT like system put on the sewing machine, so you can link them. It has Wi-Fi connections and so on. But at the end, it's still the speed is still very confined by how fast the skilled workers can sew. Right? Some people can sew it faster, some people can sew it less. So you really is using digital technologies to control the time. But when you are going to that 3D knitting and so on, then it's totally different. The speed of the machine, it's not confined. The speed of the process is not confined by the person controlling it, weaving that.
Because one machine is producing the entire piece, right? That's a big difference.
Yeah. So and then now and that's another issue is that in the textile, when you make a clothes, there's still besides sewing, there's a lot of final processing, like attaching the buttons and so on. That's still very manual labor intensive, and that is often and steaming and ironing, and that's often the part where IoT is not really digitizing that part, and it's a very important part of the production process. So we are digitizing the sewing part, but we're still not at really digitizing the buttons and trims attachment, and also the ironing pressing part, and even the final packing. So until then, the Industry 4.0 is still some time away.
Yeah, very interesting to see that. So you can already produce some pieces with not too many buttons, not too many things, to add within one machine. That's already the case now.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that within the plan, which is very Chinese, because the state has a plan in China, the circular economy is mentioned. So, more generally speaking, I like to talk about recycling. It seems to be a very big topic for you. You even got involved in a new company, new venture, specifically to push this idea of recycling. How do you move your company from using non-recycled to recycle? Do you get the raw material and the older product and you recycle it yourself, or you buy the raw material already recycled and put in your factory? How does it work? And do you have to change things in your factory to use recycled raw material?
For textiles, for Cheng Kung, my family business, a few years ago we started using recycled materials into our collection for what we produce for our customers. So recycled products, the quality, and they have certain characteristics. It's not like new products, new material. So we have to adjust for the dyeing and so on to that will be more better matched to that dyeing process, to that material. That's one of the biggest case. For example, we hear a lot now about fabrics made from bottles, right? From water bottles. So that kind of fabrics usually made from mechanical recycling. So really, is chopping up the bottles and then turning them into pellets again, melt them and turning them into pellets again. And this material, it's right now the technology it's very good. They can make them almost just as new, sometimes even maybe better than new ones. But we still have to, when it is dyeing this material, we still have to do certain adjustment, not like before. So when we are telling our mills is that this is made from recycled material, so they will have literally adjust their recipe. It's like cooking. Oh, you have this kind of veggie. Okay, I need to put a little more salt to get that flavor. That think about it that way.
But does it mean you need to change your machines? I get. I also think you don't have to change the machines. It's more how to articulate them and to position them and so on.
Yeah, we don't really have to change the machines. We just have to tweak the machines a little bit to adjust to that material.
I see. So you buy the recycled raw material, you put in your machine, and you have to adapt the way you use the machine, but that's it. You don't have to do too much investment into the factory, and you don't have to actually process yourself again the material you get recycled. It's already processed, and you can already use it.
Yeah, because we work very upstream to supply chain where we know these people who actually collect and they process these process these waste bottles and so on, so we can link them, because it's a very big investment. If I invest into a factory, it's also a totally different field. So we've really focused is to connecting the dots. We're connecting to the supply chain where that to create a one-stop solution.
How many times can we recycle a product? You produce recycled products. This product can be recycled again?
Yes. If we look at the products, because right now earlier I talked about mechanical recycling. Mechanical recycling really is just like it's like making bread, right? You have a dough, you're really beating and so on. So when you're doing mechanical recycling, the material, the bonds between the monomers, actually the bonds it over time becomes weaker. But there's a new process, actually not new process, chemical recycling, where we break that polymer, that plastic, into its building block we call monomer. So think about I have my son's Lego here. So think of this, okay? So think of this as a fabric, okay? So in mechanical recycling, we smash this and then we try to rebuild this car. So some things will break, right? But in chemical recycling, we're taking this apart, okay? To this fundamental, it's just back to a wheel, okay? And then we're putting it back together like that. So this wheel and so on, it won't get back to the building block. So it won't get the quality won't be affected as much. So in theory, you can recycle as many times as you want. But because this industry is quite new, so nobody has been recycling that many times yet.
I see. So it could be real circular, meaning to reuse and reuse and reuse the same material. It could be.
Yes, yeah.
So talking about REMAKEHUB, you talk a lot about nets from ocean.
Yes.
It seems to be one of the one of the drivers. And it opened my eyes on the fact that companies which focused on recycled products could focus on a niche to reuse nets from ocean, to reuse bottles we drink from every day, and so on. Is it your idea to have a specific orientation, a specific origin of products, also to give more sense to people, and maybe a big hairy goal to say that you would more nets than others? Why is the nets from the ocean is so prevalent in your presentation?
Because that issue is not being dealt with. A lot of the ways have already, they can turn it into something, or there's already a process, a flow of collecting, reusing, or recycling them. But for nets, it's still a waste that hasn't been really being dealt with a lot. So that's why we pick them. Some other clients we have, they would come to us sometimes. It's with the waste they have in the factory. They may not want to go through the traditional the waste process. They want to maybe turn into something more valuable. Then that's where we look at that also. But it's basically trying to turn these waste into something more valuable. Something that will can go back into the industry, more valuable products that people can use. Yeah.
And how do you make sure, actually, because you collect the raw material from other providers, how do you make sure that from nets from the ocean, how do you track all this? I understand that you developed a blockchain to track where the products are coming from. Is it why you came to the idea to develop a blockchain to know where the product is coming from, because you wanted to specifically recollect those nets in the ocean?
Yeah, adding the traceability is it's also part of a consumer education process, so they can learn about, okay, that's what's being done to the nets. That's how the process of it. So it has a lot of consumer education into it. So down the road, we see that the traceability is not just about tracing, telling you where it was, the process. But we see it that it can be linked to the entire company's CRM, their whole ERP system, where they can show us, okay, how much maybe carbon emission you decrease. It can also maybe help the build the brand story, but also could help in the customers' engagement to create new purchases and so on. Yeah. And also maybe even though you can, because it's traced now, you can use bring it back to the brand and then recycle them or sell them in a second-hand market. Yeah.
Yeah, it's giving much more depth to the brand, much more. Much more talk about as well from a brand perspective. to go to involve the customer and the client much more. Talking about REMAKEHUB, you use the word "we follow the cradle to cradle design concept." Could you tell us more about what it is?
Yeah, so Cradle is really it is in a circular process. So we want to make it in a circular process that where even the waste from production we could go back into to making the material. It's not creating waste. That's the idea we want. Sometimes we may have some challenges in that, but we try to tackle that to really create in a circular way, so that the product we're not using anymore, the waste we're turning into something valuable, but while we're still doing it in a very eco-friendly way.
You mentioned as companies which could use the way you work, like Adidas, like Patagonia, which is very well known for on those topics, but also Prada, which is was surprising to me to read about them. Does it mean that those companies are already using materials, recycled materials from nets, or that those companies are using similar raw materials?
Yeah, those brands definitely they have products from fishing nets. They also have products made from bottles.
So they use all of them, right? Because from fishing nets, can you every kind of garment? What can you produce from them?
No, fishing nets is quite actually it's a more challenging ways to work with than the bottles. The reason why bottles are good for making clothes is that because these are food grade plastic, these PE bottles. So they are very high grade to start off with. So turning them into fibers, filaments, and yarns into fabrics it's much easier than the fishing nets. In fishing nets, there's a few materials. One of the main one is the nylon. And nylon material is a strong one, but when the nylon material, when they're using fishing nets, they're not that high-end type of material. So there's still a lot of work needs to be done. And also nylon, it's every plastic, actually, I should say, every plastic, PET, nylon, PP, they have their own characteristics, and they are only good at making certain things. So for nylon, it's as tough, it's a strong, but it's a more rigid material. So they're only good for certain things that we can make. So making certain glasses is okay, but if you want to make it into really soft, flexible products, that's not really possible. Even though we're trying to in R&D to make them softer, make them more transparent, but it's still a process that we're doing in testings and trials and so on.
When you see a finished product yourself, are you able to tell if it's made from recycled raw material or not?
It's hard to tell. From fishing nets, it doesn't smell fishy, so you cannot tell. So that's why that's the traceability and all this. It's important to tell that, and also working in a closed loop, so we know exactly where they're from. It's important.
You would say it's not possible, right, to see if it has been made from recycled raw material?
There are some testings that it could be able to tell certain characteristics of it.
I'm asking that because I believe the biggest driver for brands and companies to go into recycle will be the market, will be people, the clients who are asking for that. Concerned about the environment. How do you feel about the markets currently, specifically in China? Do you feel Chinese consumers, buyers are concerned about the circular economy, about recycled products? Of course, that's something which is growing, but is it mainstream now? Is it something key to do, or is still nice things to add, but not necessary?
I'd say this couple of years will be the golden year for sustainability, especially in fashion, because it's a trend that in the West it's already trending for a few years. COVID, it makes people more concerned about environment and wellness, well-being. So I am through my current customers engagements and so on. We're seeing a lot of brands, not even in that are not traditionally in the apparel industries, or more in the other FMCG market that want to have this sustainability angle into their processes. And also, I'm seeing that even startups in different fields in other consumer products, even like shampoo or personal care products, these startups, they're also adding these eco-friendly, wellness, well-being, sustainable angle into their brand. So it's really growing, and it's no longer just a tier one city, Shanghai small niche group type of thing. It is thriving, and I'll see that it will get spread really quickly in China. This concept, yeah.
My feeling, and I'd like to have your view on that, is that when companies like Stella McCartney are going to make out of their products the recycled part as a key component to sell the product, the key identity of the product. This is when it's going to become mainstream. This is when it's going to change the economy, because people will buy this product because it's a brand and it's recycled. Because there is all this identity, this willingness to do good, right? Tech for good or fashion for good. Do you feel we are already at this level where people would buy a product because it's recycled, not because of the brand only, but because it's part of the identity of the brand?
I do see some consumers will, but at the end of the day, sustainability, I would say, is that it's just part of your business. It's this mindset, this process is just part of your business. Your brand should be built on still the brand story, and then sustainability is just one of the pillar of it. At the end, if you want to people to love your brand, it's not, you cannot just keep on advocating about sustainability. You need to have that angle, but it still goes back to what your brand is all about, how good your product is, and value for money, and all these fundamental things. It's sustainability. It will be a must-have in the industry. Yeah.
You have been co-founder of a company in fashion. So actually, you wanted to sell to the end clients called Black Rags. I think you stopped at some point the company, or you left. What is art in creating a brand? Because you have succeeded in creating in manufacturing. So in some way, I think that, okay, now let's sell to the end client. That's why the underwear company called 68 did. They were producing for Victoria's Secret. They created a brand. What was the challenges of creating a brand to consumers?
At the beginning of Black Rags, we were more aiming for we want to create a quality items that at a very affordable cost. It was mainly for the UK market, because my other two co-founders were in UK, so we had that plan. But then Brexit hits, and then the exchange rate no longer makes sense for our brand. So we had to change the whole operation, the thing, and that's where we were hitting some roadblocks, where we want to create something value for money that is great quality, but then at that point it wasn't possible. So we were trying to go into a more premium brand. But we lacked that connectedness to the consumer, so that we at the end we see, okay, it wasn't really going well, and then we decided to stop it. And we actually stopped the company.
I see. Yeah, the circumstances of the Brexit and how to connect with the end clients being certainly more costly than what you would have expected.
Yes, that was even though we got into some really good clients. Our first season, when we started, we got into ASOS, and then the second season, we were already talking with Zalando, we were signing contracts, and even afterwards, we were able to get onto Harvey Nichols and so on. But it was still a struggle, even though it's really about when you're moving up into the higher up level, you really needed the brand story. So that where we lacked some specialness of the brand. Yeah.
Before going to the typical question I end the interview, I'd like to talk about EO. You are a member of EO, EO, and I'd like to ask you, what's your big hairy goal? I feel you are driving your business with. I feel a sense of changing a bit of society and changing how things are made through the recycling and circular economy. Is it linked to a big hairy goal, as we say, for you?
I don't have that big of a big hairy goal. Not like my co-founder in REMAKEHUB. She has a bigger goal. I want to make things better. I think through technologies and a new process, I think we could make the society and make things better, create better products that are less harmful to the environment. So I don't have that major goals that I want to change the world in that way. I just want to make things that so people are buying products that are better than before. Just keep that evolution, keep going. Yeah.
Good transition, because EO is also suggesting books and resources. And the question I have is, what books inspired you most during your entrepreneurial journey, and what you would suggest people to read, or which was changing for you to read?
One of the book I really like is the Sum of All Things. It's about consumer behavior. And some of the things is about it's about aspirational class and so on. It's about the new consumer class, and I can really relate that into our industries. People now are focusing more on the well-being of themselves and the environment also, and that I see it's the new consumers' aspiration. They want to have a good life, but also doing less damage to less negative impact to the surroundings they have. Yeah.
How do you? What the name is? The name is Sum of All Things?
Yeah, Sum of All Things. Some like the plus sign that have like together. Yeah, Sum of All Things. Yeah.
Just try to Google it. It's not easy to find, but Sum of All Things.
It's on Amazon. Yeah, Sum of All Things. Yeah.
What do you read to stay up to date about China? What do you have some suggestions of what to read and what to subscribe to on the market, Chinese market?
6 o'clock news. That's one of the ones I use a lot. I watch a lot of news. I like to watch news in general. When I was little, I would skip homework and watch news. I don't know. I just like to watch news. So I watch. I watch news in Chinese. State Council app. I watched the Dongfang, the SMG, the local Shanghai news. I would also every now and then watch some news in the Jiangsu province and the Zhejiang province and Guangdong, other provinces, just to see what kind of new policies and things. Because I have family, my extended family is in Zhejiang, so I watch the news there to see what's going on. And I have businesses there, right? So I need to keep up to date. It's quite interesting to watch the news in those places. What kind of new developments they have in their local cities and so on. It's quite interesting because China is a very big country, and understanding what these parts are, what these other provinces are doing. It's quite important for myself. I also read the besides Weibo, I read the State Council app also. the state council they have the English version. So they have new policy. When they have new policies, they publish on that. So you can kind of get ahead sometimes, because sometimes of this new policy may not be on the news. So you can know what's going on there.
Yeah, and that's one thing actually I wanted to say. I had an interview before with an entrepreneur, and he was telling me China is the most transparent state government in terms of policy. When they do something, they publish everywhere, right? So you mentioned about the app, the state council. When there is a policy, it's planned years ahead, and they will apply it. They will do it. It's not like in a lot of countries in the West where every 5 years, every 4 years is changing, and they want to do it, but they cannot because of whatever happens. So actually, it's very, very transparent and easy to understand what the goal are of the government, how they want to do it. What productivity tool do you like to use? WeChat being a very unproductive tool because you are always disturbed with it. Would you mind sharing a bit of productivity tool you use? Do you use Trello? Do you use a specific CRM?
I think WeChat is the most productive and unproductive tools that I'm using. It's productive because sometimes when I want to remind myself, I would type a message as a draft on the top the chat group in my work chat group for my company, or if or with my wife, I need to remind her something, I just type a draft for next day. So it's always there. When I open it, I'll see it. So it's a good reminding tools, because sometimes I just ignore those reminders, those notifications too. It's unproductive. It's also very unproductive because there's a lot of like this these messages coming, noise. Yeah, this noise. It's hard to avoid them. And I think it's in China, especially where it's so digital connected, where everybody is using WeChat. Even my 80 years old grandma to young people like in the teenage in 10, 12 years old are using WeChat. So it's a lot of noise and all the contents on WeChat is just, it's hard to really keep up. I just don't have the time to keep up with all the things. So I just sometimes just skim through it. And I also have a lot of people on my WeChat account, contacts on there. Sometimes if I'm in a meeting for half a day or most of the day, then I can see there's a lot of red stuff there. Sometimes I may end up like not intentionally ignoring people because it just have too many things on there. You know, it's hard to sort through these things. Yeah.
One of the most important thing is the voice message. I think a lot of people hate them, but still WeChat is making it possible. That's something I think WeChat will have to find a way to how to work with voice message, which is something that a lot of people dislike actually on WeChat, taking too much time.
Love-hate relationship.
So I like to end the interview with one question with two aspects, which is unexpected success, unexpected failure. So you have seen in China, you have been in China for long. You went back to when you went to Shanghai in 2005. You have seen China pre Taobao, pre Tmall, pre iPhone.
Yes.
So it looks like an ancient time. What have you witnessed as a success, which was pretty unexpected? Let's say when you went back to Shanghai, or when you arrived in Shanghai, and what at the opposite of failure that was unexpected for you and happened?
Yeah, in 2005, the middle ring wasn't even completed yet. They were still building it. The success I'll see. One thing I think sometimes is the McDonald's and KFC, because I was in Shanghai in 1995 for visiting. I spent a month, also a little bit more than a month in Shanghai during the summertime, because I have relatives here, so I would stay with them. So that was my first real experience in Shanghai. I would be riding bikes with my uncle. He would take me to a lot of places and so on. And that was a time where people would say like, oh, wow, KFC, McDonald's, those things were expensive. No, they're expensive. Just burgers, no, people would just, there was a lot of doubts about these fast food chains. There were even doubts about Metro in 1995. Because like, no, it's too expensive. Nobody would buy that. But right now we see it was totally changed. I think it's just the reason for the success is being localized and being many Chinese people are still very driven by value for money. So they could see the value, the localization, the value for money there. They could see that. I think that what's being successful. And now I see that Tesla is a very successful story in China because a lot of people that I know, even in tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, when they're first-time car buyer, they're thinking about buying the Model 3, first-time car. They're building that brand identity that is so strong that people are like, oh, I need to buy a car now. Maybe I should buy a Tesla. That's the first thing coming to mind. I think that kind of branding, it's very strong. Elon Musk is himself is like a walking brand of its own, right? So I think that the whole story between Tesla, what they're building, a very unique car, how Elon Musk he really had big hairy goals, right? His personality and things all together really built that brand, really add a lot of brand value to it. And successful story, I think it's the foreign brands, a lot of fashion brands just didn't make it in China. I think as myself working in the fashion industry, I see that it's like it's hard to always try to understand why and so on. I think fashion is a thing where it's a cultural thing. It's a social. It ties a lot with social trends. So for a brand, it needs to be successful in China. You need to really keep tab with the cultural trends, how fast it changes. And nowadays, I think with the internet and even in the West also, it's that the longevity of a brand is becoming shorter and shorter, especially in fashion, in clothing, in apparel. I think you need to kind of rebrand or have a brand update every 5 years, or otherwise your brand becomes a bit relic. People just don't resonate with that brand story and the products anymore. So it's tough. Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
I did enjoy. I'd like to thank as well Emmanuel Dell and Sophia Bakta for helping for the interview and putting all things together and getting you on the show. Thanks everyone for listening.